Okay, Steve, I'm not a scientist, but I'm somebody who wants to know a lot about the practical sides of it. And I was listening to you much earlier, and you were talking about the thorium community, and you were mentioning how international it is and how diverse it is. And later on, I heard you talk about a lot of the experiments being done in Japan. The one word I didn't hear was the word China. And I can't imagine a subject of this nature not bringing China in. So what is the story with China when it comes to thorium? Are they allies? Are they competitors? Are they opponents? Bring China into the picture for me.
They're all three. They are allies, they are competitors, they are opponents. China is a bizarre case. Right now, here in the United States, it's illegal to do what I want to do, so I can't do it. China...
What is it you want?
I want to mess around in my lab right here. I want to get the world's first molten salt reactor going.
And what is illegal about that in the United
I
States?
can't touch the thorium. I can't use thorium as a fuel. No national laboratory will support me to do the nuclear work on their campus. Can't do any of it.
Because it's a radioactive material.
Right, it's radioactive, but for a host of political reasons that have nothing to do with the thorium part. China, on, I believe, January 26th of 2011, publicly announced that they are dedicating $5 billion toward thorium molten salt research. Okay, molten salt research in general and thorium molten salt research in particular. Right now, they are working with Westinghouse in China to work on molten salt cooled reactors. In other words, use the molten salt not as the fuel like I was talking about before, but just merely as the working fluid, just to transfer the heat, because it's a great heat transfer medium. So that's maybe good, okay? The bad is, and the ugly, is that because there's no work going on here in the United States, there can't be. And there isn't for political, very, very political reasons.
I will ask you to explain those political
I will,
reasons
and I'm grudgingly going to, I'm grudgingly going to answer you. They are going to use our own patent office against us. They are going to file the intellectual property here at the United States Patent and Trademark Office down in Washington, D.C., and they are going to lock up what could be a nascent and perhaps burgeoning industry here in the United States. And we won't be able to touch it.
But you said they're partnering with Westinghouse, which is an American company.
Sure. Okay, sure. And how is that going? So now basically, you've basically given carte blanche to Westinghouse to work with the Chinese and have a lock on it. That is not American ingenuity. That is not American competition. I have no idea what Westinghouse is going to do with it. What if Westinghouse is going to do nothing and not do it here because the political liability is too great? I have no idea. The problem is I don't have the choice and I don't have the option. And what I do see is I see a very big country like China who has a hell of a lot of money and owns a hell of a lot of our debt and can come right here to United States soil and lock it.
But lock what up? The energy market?
Lock up the intellectual property.
Let's say they lock up the intellectual property.
Sure, let's
say they lock up the intellectual property. Worst case scenario, okay? They will want to sell things here.
Yes.
And they will take the profits home. That's what we're worried about.
That's one of the reasons, one of the things we're worried about. I could name 30 things.
Okay, I was going to say, why do we care? Since you were making a very big point that the reason this is all important to you is for the health of the planet, and for the health of the oceans, and for the planet that your children will inherit and that their great-great-grandchildren will inherit. Who cares whether this planet is kept healthy and the money goes into Chinese pockets or my pockets or Saudi Arabian pockets? Why do we care?
National security is one. Why in Congress was the purchase of a telecommunications company by China voted down? Not 2-3 months ago. National security. We need to care about what goes on within our borders. We do. Any country does. I'm not special because I'm American. You care if you're Czech, you care if you're German, you care if you're French, you care if you're Canadian. You have to care. You have to care about national security. Giving away a fabulous energy platform that could power today's America and the same America 1,000 years from now, because we have 1,000 years worth of thorium right on the United States soil. Wow. And then give that away and then not even be able to exploit it for ourselves?
But wouldn't we be able to license the patent?
Okay. For how much money? Who's going to come up with it? Is it yet again going to? Are we yet again going to be beholden to gargantuan corporations? I know this sounds cliche, okay, but I actually do believe in the American dream. I actually do believe that 60% of the employment in the United States right now is for small businesses. I do believe that since the inception of the United States Patent and Trademark Office was with the signage of the first patent in 1790. I think like April 14th, 1790.
But who's counting?
Okay, but who's counting? We have a long history of American invention and innovation. This can't be locked up. We are being stifled. We are being locked down with the dreaded America Invents Act, which was just brought into enforcement on March 15th of this year.
What is that act?
It's first to file, not first to invent. I am a scientist. The thing that I value most is my laboratory notebook, okay? Because that's where that's where I track everything. And that's where inventions are documented. That's why I have to write in black ink, okay? Because it's a legal document, okay? With the passage of the America Invents Act, which is now in force, I can't invent anything anymore, okay? I have to file it first in order to be called first inventor. My laboratory notebook no longer has the status that it has had since the inception of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. That's a very fundamental paradigm shift here in the United States. That's bad. In essence, the America Invents Act says it's first to file.
So in other words, if I sneak in here and I take a peek at your notebook and I run in and file for a patent tomorrow, you're out of luck.
You got it.
Okay, gotcha.
You got it. Worst case scenario, you got it. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. Now that has to do with the ineptitude of the United States Congress. But with this confluence of events, the Chinese can lock this up, lock this technology up. Okay, this is the land of invention and innovation. I actually still believe what I read and was taught in my history books. I don't like that. I don't like that, and I can tell you right now that American ingenuity, American invention, and lots of robust scientists, a lot of them a hell of a lot smarter than I am, are ready, willing, and able to go to town on this. And we can make Wall Street a ton of money. We can make medical isotopes for all of North America. We can make exotic stuff that I like to play with. Because they have very interesting physics and chemistry. We can have, like I said before, a robust, clever, diversified energy landscape, not only for just now, but for the next 1,000 years. We can do it, and we can do it, I would argue, better than anybody else, because we've been doing it for such a long time here in the US.
Well, then help me understand something. From the way you describe molten salt reactors, in general, and thorium reactors in particular, it's a no-brainer. This is a win-win situation. It's not a new technology. It's been around for decades.
Agreed.
But they haven't proliferated.
Correct.
So why not? I'm going to give you multiple choice here, okay?
There's an easy answer to this question, by the way. No, go.
The multiple choice I was going to give you, and by the way, it's check off all that applies, right. but I will make you explain. All right?
That's fine.
Is it politicians who are in the pocket of big oil and
big nuke,
or big coal? Is it the people who are reliant on coal mining for their livelihood? Now that doesn't only mean miners, that also means the people who run the stores that sell to miners. It's a whole economy.
Absolutely. Derivative markets, absolutely, yeah.
Is it environmentalists who hear the word nuclear and run for the hills?
It's all of the above.
Is it, well, like I was going to say, but I'm going to ask you to elaborate on it. Is it regulators who don't know what they're doing? I mean, what's going on? Why?
It's all of the above.
But then I need elaboration.
Sure. When I was writing a business plan, okay, one of my business plans that I wrote, and I was first doing it. One of the first questions it says is, what barriers to entry can you put into place to prevent other competitors from coming in? Okay, this isn't conspiracy theory. This is right out of Business School 101.
Of course.
Okay, so what has big nuclear done? They've done exactly what they're supposed to have done. They put huge barriers to entry, right, in place, starting from 1954 by including thorium, which would be marked wrong on any high school chemistry or physics test. It's not a fissile material. It's merely fertile. So we even have a fundamental simple science mistake in the 1954 Atomic Energy Act. So big nuclear has put in massive barriers to entry, not only because nuclear is a very dangerous thing if improperly handled, right? So you have to have a lot of regulation. But you've also made what could be a fabulous civilian energy platform, because you can't make weapons-grade stuff with it. You've effectively made it illegal.
You've been talking about thorium.
Yes, I'm talking about thorium. Yeah. Molten salt reactors, don't even worry about thorium. Molten salt reactors in general. It is a fabulously better heat transfer platform. Well, but all 104 of the operating nuclear reactors here in the United States, every single one of them uses a solid fuel. Do you know the costs that would be associated with trying to switch over to a molten salt reactor? They would be unfathomably enormous. You have to start from scratch. So I get it. It's a simple economics argument. I get it. But let us in.
But where are the environmentalists?
Environmentalists, another great, environmentalists and miners, environmentalists. They have unfortunately seen the decades of lousy reactor design.
So in other words, they're hearing the word nuclear and they go, nuclear, and running for the hills.
Listen, nuclear energy is the safest form of energy known to man. It is, for the amount of energy that we get, the amount of electricity that's produced, it's amazingly safe. Amazingly safe. The problem is poor stewardship. The problem is poor design. Right? So we get boatloads of very, very clean, extraordinarily safe energy, okay, out of it. The problem is that through the confluence of events, history, the Cold War, all the other jazz, we've got lousy design and lousy thermodynamics transfer. So when you talk to an environmentalist, all they do is they get freaked out about the waste. Yes, the waste is a problem, but open your eyes.
Because with thorium, the waste isn't a problem.
Correct. But you often, like you just said, you can't get past the nuclear. The moment you mention the word nuclear, the environmentalists run for the hills. Look at the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is still ardently anti-nuclear. Now, we have very, very good people like Dr. Alex Canera out on the West Coast trying to change that. He's trying to change that attitude on the part of the Sierra Club. But it's really hard to do it. You mentioned the coal miners. Coal is getting screwed because coal is now more expensive than natural gas. And the coal miners have been duped into this nonsense that they're blaming Obama, or I don't care who to blame. Don't blame it. Blame dollar signs. It's now cheaper to do natural gas than it is to do coal, period.
To extract it or to burn it?
Burn it. Everything. All of it. With the advent of horizontal drilling and fracking, right, hydraulic fracturing, with the advent of these technologies, it is now cheaper to, per BTU, or however you want to measure the energy, it is now cheaper to burn natural gas than it is to burn coal. That's the bottom line. There's no conspiracy theory, there's no Democrats.
That's been true for a while, yeah.
Yes, it has. So now, deregulate thorium, create the thorium bank like John Kutch and Jim Kennedy are trying to do, have a safe place to put the thorium. There's nothing to worry about, okay, about the thorium, okay? But have a safe place if you're going to worry about something that is so mildly radioactive. Bananas are actually more radioactive than the thorium. I don't know if you knew that, but the potassium-40 isotope in the banana is actually more radioactive than the thorium.
I just ate one.
Right. Yeah, right. You just ate a radioactive substance.
And you let me do it.
Right before you did. Put the thorium in a bank, just like John Kutch and Jim Kennedy are trying to do. By doing that, you unlock the thousands and thousands of metric tons of rare earth elements that are allowed here in the United States. Do it. Guess what? Those coal miners know how to mine. Guess what? If there's boatloads of jobs in Idaho where there happens to be a huge concentration of rare earths, or in North Carolina where there are alluvial rare earths, or in Florida where there are beach sands of rare earths, Anywhere in the country, they'll go mine it. Wow, that's great work. Wow, it's mining work. Wow, you see what I'm saying? It's like,
But I'm going to have to take it on faith because I don't know very much about mining. Are you telling me that the skill set needed to mine coal is the same skill set as the skill
it's similar. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the
are
same.
we talking transferable? Because
Yes, absolutely. Because as much as I
without massive retraining, that it actually
no. I mean, it's basically. I'm not a miner, but it's basically the same equipment. You're either stripping because of veins, or in the alluvial case, you're taking it off the surface, or like in the hills of North Carolina, like at the base of the Appalachian Mountains. It's by and large the same skill set.
But it would, from playing devil's advocate on the question of job creation, it would, however, require huge, massive relocation.
Okay, so.
So, and if I say to you, I want you and your wife and your 3 children tomorrow to relocate to Alaska, I found you a good job, you're going to be very happy?
Sure, and if it were paying me fat cash, sure. I would challenge you to ask the thousands and hundreds of thousands of people working in the natural gas industry right now in Louisiana, in Texas, and in Pennsylvania, where'd they come from? They came from everywhere else in the United States. Why? Because jobs are jobs. They're good jobs, they're quality jobs, they're well-paying, they have a reasonable safety factor. I'm sure there are egregious examples. Everywhere there are always bad apples, okay? But by and large, I would say if that was my training and I didn't go to grad school or whatever like I did or whatever, I'm gonna go to the jobs. It's a good paying job, I'll bring my family, it's a reasonable location, fine. I think that is a very fair cost-benefit analysis for the average father of 3 like me. I mean, the difference is that I'd much rather be here in my lab looking at atomic and subatomic structure.
Gotcha.
Because that was my training and that's my passion.
You know, you reminded me, when you were talking much earlier about the thorium community and saying it's pretty much unified, although of course there is dissent. Are we talking about dissent about the technology or about the environmental impact or about the costs? What are the sticking points within the thorium community?
You have individuals who are of an older generation, okay? Dr. Robert Hargraves is an outstanding physicist, but he's older and he remembers when national laboratories meant national laboratories, big ideas, big science. We don't have that anymore. Unfortunately, our national laboratories aren't being utilized the way they were decades ago to make big science happen. It's not happening like that, unfortunately, anymore. So that's one point of dissension. I personally think that we could still use national laboratories, and I went to Los Alamos and talked to some fabulous chemists and physicists back in February when I gave my talk at the NETS conference in Albuquerque. I went to Los Alamos and I talked to a bunch of really great scientists, and I know we've got world-class scientists, so I know that we can do that, but I don't think that there's enough political will in the halls of Congress to be able to pull that.
Is the problem purely big nukes? In Congress?
In Congress, I think almost exclusively. I hate to say it. Barriers to entry are barriers to entry. It's the first thing you learn in Business 101. This is not conspiracy theory, okay? Get as many barriers to entry as possible in place so that you don't have as much competition. That's better for your bottom line, that's better for your shareholders. Okay, I get it, okay? But come on. There has to be a tipping point. There has to be some ability for us to get in. Passionate scientists, just like me, all over the country, just the United States, we want in. We want in, okay? And I don't know how else to do it. I don't have $1 million to go fill somebody's campaign coffers. I don't have it. It's actually more than $1 million. I actually know what the price tags are because I did my digging.
I'm going to start with a story. It's a story that we've all been involved with, along with every other form of life on this planet for billions of years. And it's the story of how thorium has sustained and nurtured life on this earth. The thorium within our planet, along with uranium and potassium, releases heat that keeps our Earth's core molten, which helps generate the magnetic field through a complex process that many engineers and scientists have tried to explain to me, and I still don't understand. But I'm glad it's there because, as an old NASA guy, it does this important role of deflecting the solar wind, which would otherwise strip our atmosphere off. We don't like that. It also helps generate the heat that drives volcanism, which leads to plate tectonics and the recycling of carbon in the earth. And so we get to enjoy this lovely, green, fertile, inhabitable planet thanks to the blessings of thorium. And I tell this story to people, and sometimes they can scarcely believe it, but it is an amazing story, and I appreciate Kim Johnson, who helped turn me on to what thorium has done to sustain our planet. This gift from the stars, even after doing all this, is now potentially ready to help us in our moment of crisis, because this is the human race right now. We are in a precarious situation. The energy that sustains our marvelous industrial civilization, and we can gaze out the windows and we can see what access to abundant and significant sources of energy can do for a civilization. We live a lifestyle. We have a standard of living. We have the ability to travel, to eat, to sleep, to be kept safe from the elements. We live a lifestyle that no people in history has ever even approached, and we have it because of our access to energy. But our access to energy has risks attached to it going forward in the future. If we want to have an industrial society, we can't continue to base it almost entirely on the use of fossil fuels. Not only the risk of fossil fuel depletion, but also the risk to the environment due to the accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, due to pollution, spreading of mercury from burning coal. This isn't a sustainable solution. It's not a sustainable way of living. And just looking at the scale of what we do with fossil fuels, natural gas, coal, oil, the pollution associated with it, the risks to global climate change, we sense intuitively that this is not a way that we can continue to go forward. There's a lot of people who think that this is the answer, that it's going to be natural energy flows like wind and solar power. Those energy flows are conceptually very attractive because they seem infinite, they seem abundant, and indeed, on the scale of human existence, they are essentially infinite. But they're intermittent, and they're also very diffuse. They do not have the ability to concentrate energy production in a small volume like more dense forms of energy do. The inevitable conclusion of using a diffuse and occasionally intermittent power source, particularly with solar, is the sun goes down every night, and you're forced to turn to energy storage, which is expensive and difficult. So people like us think about the energies of the atom, because the energies of the atom are so much greater than the energies of rearranging chemical bonds, of chemistry. To access the energy in the nucleus offers 1,000,000 times the potential of accessing the energy of the electrons. But stuff like this is often thrown in our face, and possibly for good reason, too. I got my issue of The Economist the other day, and there they were telling me that what I'm working on is the dream that failed. And I really wanted to craft a letter to the editor right then. And it's funny because I've actually been in The Economist before, so I kind of wish they would have maybe interviewed one of us about this, although they did make favorable mention of thorium and molten salt in the articles that were part of this sequence. But a lot of people have read this, and they've talked to me, and they've said, Kirk, why is a magazine like The Economist saying nuclear power is the dream that failed? Is that true? Because a lot of people seem to think it. My rebuttal to that is I say there are some inescapable truths about nuclear energy that are not subject to public opinion. And if we do turn away from nuclear energy, we're still going to be facing these inescapable truths. One of them is nuclear fuels have 1,000,000 times the energy potential of fossil fuels. That is simply a truth. The other one is nuclear power does not emit carbon dioxide and it can operate without oxygen. It's not based on combustion. We have some submarine officers in the room with us who can attest to the ability of nuclear power to operate underwater without oxygen for very, very long periods of time. In my time at NASA, that was a particular interest to us because you're not able to employ combustion when you're in space. I really think that there are three basic keys that we've got to get into the public's mind if we are to realize a new era of thorium energy. And the first one is that liquid fuel is a superior approach to nuclear energy than solid fuel. And feeding off of that realization is the thorium fuel cycle, which is uniquely enabled in liquid fuel, offers more potential for the long run than the uranium fuel cycle. I think this has been missed for many decades because the focus has been the use of solid fuel, and thorium does not perform particularly well in solid fuel. It's a marginal improvement, but not radical. And then this third one, which has been a realization that has been somewhat slow in coming to me as well, which is that the most useful things that these machines might produce might not even be electricity. It may be other things, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that medicines and desalinated water and process heat are going to end up being more valuable products from the use of liquid fluoride thorium reactors than electricity. That electricity may end up being a secondary product. We spend a great deal of effort in the fabrication of solid nuclear fuel. My colleague Kirk, his father-in-law, is an expert in the fabrication of zirconium cladding for nuclear fuels, and he spent some time with us recently, and I really got an appreciation for just what a tenuous material that, which is just one part of how we make nuclear fuel, is. We begin by making these uranium oxide pellets, and we form them into fuel rods clad in this zirconium. Turns out the zirconium, in certain conditions, can be quite reactive with the water that's surrounding the reactor. But the part I kept coming back to in discussion was, we have a fuel and a coolant that are inherently incompatible with one another. And that's how we run nuclear today. And there's a risk there. There's a very real risk. And it was realized at Fukushima Daiichi when hydrogen gas was generated from the reaction with zirconium and water and led to a very visible explosion, several of them, in fact, that resonate in the public's minds. You know, they said, what about the explosion? I said, you mean the hydrogen gas explosion? Yeah. People just saw an explosion, they heard nuclear, oh, that's bad. But it's expensive to make nuclear fuel, and I don't like the way we do it. It costs too much, and it works too poorly. We're only using a small amount of the potential energy in the nuclear fuel, and there's a number of reasons for that.